Yaniv, good morning.
Good morning, Phil. Hi.
Thank you for being here. Yaniv, you require no introduction, but you're head of commercial development for 888 Holdings. Thank you for making time for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are you doing to stay upbeat these days? What's your routine?
Well, basically, I'm trying to break up this long day that's been lasting for a few weeks now on Zoom to a few parts, making sure I keep track of days. So a lot of espresso breaks and some workout, but trying to get some fresh air every once in a while between sessions.
And you're very active in regard to business, and a couple good articles recently, one in the New York Times. There's no lack of movement on your end. What do you think is important as a company right now? You mentioned agility, and what are some other things that companies really need to be to get through this and come out stronger?
Well, I think that typically in times of crisis, your company is measured by everything that you've invested so far, and predominantly in the people and the culture that you have. And luckily, we have the privilege of working with a tremendous group of people that were able to adjust very quickly to the new situation. In the work from home environment, we have 1,500 people in 9 global locations now working from home. And I think the main thing is agility is built on communication. So we talk more. The executive team talks and meets more. I meet with my team and talk to them to make sure that everyone's up to speed. And mostly beyond communication, just making sure that everyone's spirit's okay, everybody's doing okay, and just communication makes sure that you can react quickly to anything that changes. And we're basically seeing something new every day, at least once. So agility and flexibility are very important traits to us.
Yeah, in some cases, it feels like it's changing hour by hour.
Yeah.
In regard to iGaming, what happens next?
Well, I think the interesting part in that now that we're starting to see some states or locations starting to pull out of this shelter in place and COVID restrictions is what happens the other side. Naturally, the economy in general took a big hit. And I think that for iGaming is no different than other areas of retail or e-commerce. I think that the companies that went into this situation with a highly developed digital agenda and a diversified product suite will be coming out the other side in a better shape. I think that as a company that develops a full product suite and markets it and operates it, I think we're able to weather this being a pure digital operator and also a global one. I think diversification and online lend themselves very well to coping with something like this. So on the other side of things, I think the world separates between the ones that already have a developed online agenda and will be able to push forward, and the ones that will just accelerate its development. I think whatever happens, COVID-19 is accelerating the future. It doesn't necessarily change it materially, it just brings it forward a lot sooner, at least the way I see it.
What are some things that we're going to see is in industry in regard to this era that we're in with COVID? What are some of the big shifts that we might see as an industry?
Well, I think that, as I said, retail and land-based and what we call the traditional gaming companies would become more aggressive around building their online agenda and their constituency. I think that we're looking to address new crowds or new demographics, and that should be accelerated. And I also think that the consolidation direction that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years would persist. I think the smaller players, cash is a very big component right now. The smaller players or the bigger ones that are more heavily levered, debt will become a very key or a key consideration going forward. So I think coming out of it, the companies are now preoccupied in making sure they have enough cash on the balance sheet to continue their operation. And then part of it will also be consolidation and making sure you, again, diversify your product portfolio, either vertically and going into additional points of sale, or horizontally and just buying or merging with companies on a market basis or a product basis. I also think that gaming poker and online casino is coming out of it sort of reinforced as a product of the future. I mean, we've been 888's been operating for 23 years now. So in online terms, this is like over a century, or it feels like it. But it's a relatively young product, and I think that this crisis really puts an emphasis on its acceleration, especially in the U.S.
Maybe for some of the smaller companies who are nimble and flexible, they may be getting more attention from the big players at this moment in regard to acquisition or some other exciting things within their business.
Well, definitely. I think if you have assets, I think the main assets that would attract attention are technology and products and know-how, which basically means people. If you have the right technology and if you have a team of people that can execute on it, develop it and deploy it and market it, I think you'll be in a very sort of good spot in terms of the attention, and also the conversations you'll be having are from a different position, not of a position of a need, but from a position of growth. Well, you'll be able to power a bigger company with a bigger agenda. I think that's a very important aspect. And some of the companies out there have very interesting retail or land-based assets that could definitely be bolstered with online assets and online DNA, we call it, that could sort of supercharge a traditional gaming organization.
You've talked previously about the need for payments in the industry. Can you share a little bit more about your thoughts in regard to payments?
Well, payments in any e-commerce venture is the lifeline or the lifeblood of the proposition. As such, I mean, they're a key component. The ability for a consumer in 2020 to be able to deposit or make an acquisition easily through various platforms and devices are basically the first step to growth. I think in the U.S. we still have a way to go there. I think after 7 years, we've launched in 2013 in 3 states. Payments was a very big inhibitor on growth. It was slowly resolved by the financial institutions. So we're starting to see a lot of that growth comes from resolving payment issues. If you're looking at New Jersey, that basically hasn't stopped growing since its launch. A lot of it has to do with more payment option, but still a big part of the financial institutions does not clear gaming transactions. And I think, again, on the back of this crisis, I think the need to be able to, or to allow consumers to fund their accounts more easily and with more options is key to growth. I think it goes almost hand in hand, and I hope that the growing number of states that regulate gaming and sports betting will have a complementing effect on the financial institutions on the other side, because that'll propel any growth trajectory within the states.
Yaniv, the days change day to day, and there are some surprises along the way. And one is just give everybody kind of a view of what can the consumer play right now online in regard to sports, eSports, iGaming. What is available to them?
Well, I think the last count, I'm not sure if it's 8 or 9 states that have already gone live with mobile gaming. So in these states, you can go online and regulate. It's very important to make that distinction in the U.S. because there are a lot of offshore bookies out there that offer all sorts of propositions, but they're not regulated by the states in the U.S. and they're not paying tax. So it's very important to make the distinction. And on the regulated basis in New Jersey, for instance, on 888 Sport, you can now bet on table tennis and eSports, to name a couple of events or areas that have come from the sort of from the back up front. We're seeing great growth on both of these areas. And also play poker and casino games. Poker is having, U.S. poker is having, or global poker for that matter, but in the U.S. it's even more apparent, is having a renaissance. We're seeing the numbers coming out of the various states, and it's definitely a poker sort of reintroduced into the market. We always knew that there was a lot of nascent value in poker in the U.S. And again, I hope more states regulate it, because it's now a very strong and a preferable recreational destination to a lot of residents here. They're playing both online in tournaments, and also they're setting up their neighborhood poker games online, which is always refreshing to see. And we've just reintroduced that feature, so it has great popularity.
Yaniv, as we come to a close here, any books or podcasts that you're enjoying lately as we're spending more time at home?
Yeah, I mean, two podcasts that I highly recommend is the Bloomberg Business of Sport. I've been an avid listener, and that's even more interesting because that combination is great. And also Pivot. It's a podcast with Kara Swisher and Professor Scott Galway. Those give me the sort of the macro and sports betting elements, and beyond that, this time of year, I mostly read financial reports from a lot of our competitors. And interesting, the stock market recently is proving to be a nice substitute to ESPN. I hope we're back watching sports soon, but between that and The Last Dance, which is also a great series, and we're looking forward to the next two episodes, I think we have enough leisure.
Well, it's great getting this Friday started with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Phil.